to have you with us and to spend your part of your Sunday afternoon with us. Welcome. Thanks, everybody, joining us. And bearing with us in these awkward few minutes before we start an actual event online. I'm going to give it another minute here, and then we'll get started. And of course, my radiator is going off. So if you hear that, that's what that is. We're going to go ahead and get started. So thanks everyone for joining us. We are here today to celebrate the release of Nicole Grimberg's I'd Like to Say Sorry, but There's No One to Say Sorry To, recently released from the New Press. You may recall that Jewish Currents sent you this in winter of 2019, published under the Polish title Reva. We had the honor of being the first publication to publish Grimberg's work in English. And, you know, I know that when I encountered these stories sent to me by the translator, Sean Gasper Bai, who's with us today, I was totally floored by them and by the portrait of contemporary Poland that that Grimberg paints in these stories. And we're going to hear some of them today. I had a dream of having a dramatic reading of these stories, which really are little monologues in themselves. And I'm so happy that we have a really wonderful group today to read, including the author himself. So I am going to introduce our readers. We're going to do about 20-25 minutes of readings, and then we will shift to a Q&A between Sean Gasper Bai, the translator, and Nicole Grimberg. So I'm going to read the bios. So in order of the readings, Mikołaj Grimberg is going to read first. He's a photographer, author, and trained psychologist. Sorry, let me just wait for this siren to pass. He's a photographer, author, and trained psychologist. He has published 3 collections, Survivors of the 20th Century, I Accuse Auschwitz, and the Book of Exodus. I'd Like to Say Sorry, but There's No One to Say Sorry To is his first work of fiction, and it was a finalist for the Nikkei. Is that right? Okay, great. Poland's top literary prize, and he lives in Poland. Next reader will be Antonia Lloyd Jones. She's translated works by several of Poland's leading contemporary novelists, including Nobel Prize laureate Olga Tokarczuk, and reportage authors, as well as crime fiction, poetry, and children's books. She is a mentor for the Emerging Translators Mentorship Program and the former co-chair of the UK Translators Association. And Deborah Eisenberg is the author of 5 collections of short stories, Transactions in a Foreign Currency, Under the 82nd Airborne, All Around Atlantis, Twilight of the Superheroes, and Your Duck is My Duck, She is a MacArthur Fellow and a Professor Emerita in the Writing Program at Columbia University School of the Arts, in which she was also my teacher. Wallace Shawn is an actor, voice actor, playwright, essayist, and comedian. His film credits include My Dinner with Andre, The Princess Bride, Clueless, and Toy Story. He has also appeared in the television series Gossip Girl and Star Trek Deep Space Nine. His plays include The Designated Mourner, Aunt Dan and Lemon, and Grasses of a Thousand Colors. His book Essays was published in 2009 by Haymarket Books. And finally, Sean Gasper Bai is a translator of Polish literature, focusing on contemporary fiction and literary reportage. His recent publications include Foucault in Warsaw by, oh, you're gonna have to help me with this one, Sean.
By Remigiusz Reziński.
Thank you. And Ellis Island, A People's History by
Małgorzata Scheiner.
Thank you. He lives in Philadelphia. I think it's better for you to do that because there's no telling how I might have pronounced that. Anyway, without further ado, thank you for joining us. And just, I realized that I forgot to maybe introduce myself. I'm Arielle Angel. I'm the editor-in-chief of Jewish Currents. I will be leaving you at this point, but in very good hands. And I'm really, really excited about this program. So let's get started.
Hello, everybody. I'm very happy and proud to be here with you.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. I actually forgot one very important thing. I'm sorry to interrupt, Nikolai, but
Never mind.
All of the donations that come in through this event, this is a very important thing that I totally forgot, are going to be donated to Fundacja Ocalenia, and they provide services for refugees fleeing the war in Ukraine within Poland. And so if you look in the chat, you can find the link to donate, and that's where all the proceeds for this event are going. So sorry about that, for forgetting that. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, Sean, are you ready with the translation? Niemiec.
Just one second. I'm fiddling with my thing over here. I know.
Okay. Najgorszy zapach wydziela kolonijna umywalnia z lat 70. Ta mieszanka smrodu kupych, stęchłych ręczników i miętowej pasty do zębów Pollena. Miałem 8 lat, gdy pierwszy raz pojechałem w takie miejsce. Tata mnie spakował w tekturową walizkę, a na koniec przykleił w środku kartkę z mojego zeszytu do polskiego. Były tam w punktach wymienione wszystkie części mojej garderoby. Ile par skarpetek, majtek, koszuli, spodni, swetrów, sandałów, pepegów oraz ręcznik, piżama, szczoteczka do zębów. Pakując się na powrót, miałem sprawdzić, czy są wszystkie pozycje z listy. Mama przygotowała mi prowiant na drogę. Mojego ulubionego, pieczonego kurczaka zawinęła w papier i wsadziła do plastikowej torby. Dostałem jeszcze herbatę w chińskim termosie, z którego herbata zawsze miała chemiczny zapach. Tak wyekwipowanego wsadzili mnie rano do błękitnego autobusu Jelcz, pełnego nieznajomych dzieci. Pani wychowawczyni posadziła mnie ze swoją córką, która w pierwszej minucie powiedziała, że mnie nigdy nie polubi. Do naszego autobusu dołączona była przyczepa ze starszymi dziećmi. Szczęściarze, którzy siedzieli na samym końcu, mogli na tych starszych patrzeć i na bieżąco informować o minach, które do nas stroili. Szczególnie najstarsza dziewczynka z dużymi piersiami. Na postojach mogliśmy ich oglądać z bliska, ale oni z nami nie rozmawiali. Ledwie ruszyliśmy, wszyscy zaczęli wyjmować jedzenie. Dziwne, że każdy miał to samo. Kanapki z kiełbasą, jajko i herbatę w butelce. W sekundę autobus wypełnił się mieszaniną tych wszystkich zapachów. Trochę mi było niedobrze, a trochę chciało mi się jeść, ale zrozumiałem, że zrobię z siebie idiotę tym kurczakiem, więc nie otworzyłem mojej torby. Termos to też był niewypał. Zamiast posłuchać taty i zadbać, by stał, położyłem go pod siedzenie. Po kilku wybojach cieniutki srebrny wkład pękł i płyn wylał się na podłogę. Pani zachęcała, żebym się napił ich herbaty, ale ja, chcąc wyjść z honorem, powiedziałem, że nigdy nie jadam ani nie piję w podróży, bo to mi szkodzi. Dojechaliśmy na miejsce późnym popołudniem. Staliśmy na placu apelowym, aż przydzielono nas do grup i domków kempingowych. Pani wyczytała moje nazwisko, podniosłem rękę, wziąłem ciężką walizkę i dołączyłem do swojej grupy. Dzieci pytały, dlaczego mam takie dziwne nazwisko, ale zanim znalazłem odpowiedź, jeden chłopak powiedział, że pewnie niemieckie. Przytaknąłem i zostałem Niemcem. Wieczór i noc miałem iście niemieckie. Dowiedziałem się, co im zrobiliśmy. Nie byli agresywni, ale byli zwycięzcami. Ja zaś byłem tym, który przegrał wojnę. Ponieważ w moim krótkim życiu byłem już Żydem, który zabił Chrystusa, to pomyślałem, że może już lepiej być przegranym Niemcem. Łóżko było bardzo niewygodne. Zamiast materaca miało 3 sienniki ułożone w poprzek. Strasznie się ten składany materac wyginał, tworzył łuk, na którym nie dało się leżeć na brzuchu, a ja tylko tak umiałem spać. Nie mogąc zasnąć, czułem zapach kurczaka mamy, którego schowałem pod łóżkiem. Rano byliśmy w tej umywalni, o której wspominałem na początku. Ręczniki mieliśmy nowe, więc śmierdziało tylko kupą i miętową pastą do zębów. Bardzo liczyłem na śniadanie, bo zamiast kolacji dostaliśmy tylko słodką herbatę z wielkiego gara z kranikiem. Niestety śniadanie było niemiłym zaskoczeniem. Stygnące mleko z makaronem w głębokim talerzu. Nigdy nie widziałem takiej potrawy. Bardzo nie chciałem tego jeść, więc zająłem się wyławianiem kożuchów i układaniem ich na szlaczku talerza. Pani wychowawczyni powiedziała, że kto nie zje zupy, nie dostanie chleba z masłem. I wtedy pojawiła się ta starsza dziewczynka z dużymi piersiami, ta z przyczepy. Odnosiła właśnie swój pusty talerz. Spojrzała na mnie, później na moją zupę i zapytała, czy będę jadł. Pokręciłem przecząco głową. Wzięła zupę bez słowa, a po chwili przyniosła mi chleb z masłem. Nasz układ przetrwał całe kolonie. Mało tego, zostałem jej ukochanym Niemcem. Nauczyła mnie palić papierosy, pokazała, gdzie kupuje się słodkie mleko w tubce i jak ustrzelić na strzelnicy cygaretkę z plastikowym ustnikiem. Ona mi trzymała głowę, gdy żygałem po pierwszym machu i zachęcała, żeby spróbować jeszcze raz, bo tylko pierwszy raz jest zły. Na wieczornych dyskotekach ku zazdrości starszych chłopców tańczyła ze mną, mimo że sięgałem jej tylko do tych piersi. Pod koniec kolonii pomogła mi wyrzucić spod łóżka kurczaka mamy, z którego zaczęły wychodzić białe robaki. Polubiłem śmierdzącą umywalnię, śniadania, papierosy i nową koleżankę, która też miała niemieckie nazwisko.
Anatevka. I research familial bonds between the living and the dead. I'm a genealogist. I am the hope for a family reunion that may bring relief, even just for a while. I've seen a lot of relief pass too quickly to enjoy it, but still, I keep seeking opportunities for even a momentary connection. People phone ahead for an appointment or arrive without warning. They can be kind or unpleasant and demanding, uncompromising and hostile, or open and cooperative. Different, as people are, as Jews are. These ones here came without warning. An American couple in tourist garb. They were both wearing these strange pants that you could zip off in 2 places, turning them into either Bermuda shorts or short shorts. Maybe they were going straight from Warsaw to some lake to wade around in the reeds. They were also wearing very expensive hiking boots, which didn't look very comfortable for walking around the city. Their jackets suggested new technologies so you never sweat or freeze, and each with a little backpack covered in waterproof material. They looked like they were on an expedition. Maybe that's just what this trip was for them, a journey into the unknown. Sadly, they were ill prepared. They'd packed the wrong travel kit. "We're here to find out something more about the town my father comes from," says the man. He opens his backpack, and I wait expectantly for whatever he'll take out. Sometimes people bring such treasures it's hard to believe, like documents someone sent to relatives abroad just before the war, and which today are the only evidence that an entire town ever existed. Unfortunately, to my chagrin, my visitor pulls out a large notebook and opens it to the first page, clean and unblemished. He's waiting for the first pieces of information. I ask, "And what do you know about this town?" "Not much, basically nothing. I know what it was called." "Well, that's something already." I grab a pencil, ready to write, and I can't believe my ears. "Anatevka." "Anatevka?" I ask. "Yes. Why do you sound surprised? That's where my father grew up." Gosh, I think to myself, maybe the legendary shtetl was real. I only know it from Tevye the milkman, but truth be told, I'd never checked if anything like it existed. Maybe I was wrong. I start searching online. There is no such town. I searched databases. There was no Anatevka, or not in any of the sources I have access to anyway. This is an awful turn of events. Here, sitting in front of me, is a descendant of a Polish Jew, and all I have to say is his father couldn't have lived in Anatevka because it never existed. I'm a little apprehensive, but I say directly, "Sir, I've looked in every possible archive and nowhere can I find an Anatevka." "You call yourself a professional and you can't find a town the whole world has heard of?" He looks at his wife, who shakes her head in disbelief and rolls her eyes. "Poland. I told you we've got nothing to look for here." I'm groping for life preservers. Why don't you give me your dad's name and maybe that way we can track him down?" It really is a Jewish name. It couldn't be more Jewish. Unluckily for me, it's also very popular. Without violating client confidentiality, I can say it was like looking for a John Smith in the United States. I enter it into a search engine that reaches the furthest depths of the surviving archives. I turn the screen around, and my visitors and I start examining the fates of all these pre-war John Smiths. After 40 minutes, they're running out of patience. We haven't even gotten halfway through, and they won't last much longer. I can see with my own eyes. The woman is playing with her smartphone. The man gets up, but he doesn't leave. Instead, he takes off his jacket. That means he's determined. Maybe he has faith in my knowledge and skills after all. We start again from the beginning. Though now there's only two of us. The woman has gone to a cafe next door. I turn off the computer and ask how he knows that's where his father came from. He gives me a look of unfortunately anything but respect and starts to tell me the story. "Many years ago, in the late 70s, my parents and I were watching Fiddler on the Roof. When the camera showed the town where it took place, Dad stood up and said, 'That's my shtetl. Look, that's exactly where I grew up.' So who's right, you or my dad?"
The story I'm going to read is called On the Aryan Side. We were three little girls in the cellar. At the time, I was 9, Hella was the same, and her sister Danka was 6. We spent a very long time in the dark down there. Luckily, we had a little food with us and a few essential items. All this happened in the cellar of a mountain cottage on Zakopane. I remember it like it was yesterday. Stairs came down from the ground floor. On the landing, there was a bathroom. Then another few steps down, and you came to two rooms, one with a tiny window, the other totally dark. That's where the coal was kept, and we three with it. It was winter when we went down there. We wrapped ourselves in blankets brought from upstairs and chewed over our sorry fate. Every now and then, we sent Danka to sneak us something from the kitchen upstairs. She brought us all sorts of treasures, most often meat and sausage. To this day, I don't know how to explain it, but that's what happened. At this time, I was called Miriam, and we pretended that hiding like this was a vacation. We set up a life for ourselves in the cold basement. We had a basin so we could wash. We even managed to bring a little mirror down with us. That made the time go faster. We'd do our hair up in imaginative ways and then look ourselves over like real grown-up ladies. There were moments when our play was interrupted by sounds coming through the wall. We knew who was making that noise: Germans. Quiet through the wall meant time for us to play. Footsteps and voices meant mortal terror. We worked out a whole set of hand signals we used to replace words. We were experiencing these moments of danger at the end of my pregnancy. Luckily, we had water in the basin. On the way down, we'd grabbed 2 cloth diapers. We knew what was needed for a baby. The labor was very difficult because I had to be quiet. We were very unlucky because at that moment, the Germans returned to the other side of the wall. If they found out about us, that would be the end, and they would kill us all, including the baby. I covered its mouth so it wouldn't make a sound. We were incredibly afraid that once it was born, the infant would start to wail. I gave birth to a healthy baby-born doll, which luckily didn't make much noise. Our life started seeming rosier now that there were 4 of us, but we had a lot of trouble looking after a newborn. There was no stove for us to dry the wet diapers on, nor running water. We sometimes forgot about the Germans and ran upstairs to the bathroom. Conditions were forcing us into increasingly risky behavior. Each of us secretly dreamed of an end to our torment. Maybe we were even ready to be exposed just so this could all be over. One afternoon, we heard troubling sounds, only not through the wall, but from upstairs. We huddled in the darkest corner of the cellar and waited for what fate might bring. Suddenly, the door to our room opened. The villain found the light switch and flicked it on. Our surprise passed quickly. We started trembling. "Look out, a German, run, save the baby." We stopped yelling, and he stood there and stared at us in disbelief. He saw his 2 daughters and their friend who'd come to visit with her mom for winter break. We had our hair done up in misshapen little chignons. We were wrapped in dirty blankets, and behind us on a wash line were 2 drying diapers that looked like they'd been used to clean the cellar floor. On the coal heap lay a naked baby-born doll. He tried to figure out what we were doing, but to us, he was an invader from an evil world. We couldn't talk to him. We only informed him that We were Jews who had found a safe hiding place in this cellar, but he had ruined everything, and because of him, we were in danger of being killed. He was momentarily speechless. I don't think he'd expected his house would be a hideout on the Aryan side of the ghetto wall. Once he'd snapped out of it, he ordered us to clean up the mess. He couldn't see that he hadn't interrupted our game at all. He was actually completing our story. We'd been discovered, and we were begging for our lives. My friend's dad was an avowed anti-Semite, and this situation really made him uncomfortable. Nevertheless, he suggested we play in the living room, but that was the last place where we could hide. We explained to him over and over again, but he wouldn't relent. We spent the last days of winter break 2002 to 3 playing dress up as ladies from the 19th century.
So this story is called The Chair. Some Jews recently wanted to take our chair away. A chair is just a chair. It wasn't even that comfortable, but we won't hand it over. Years ago, my grandpa showed me the bottom of the seat had a smudged stamp that said Germany. As he put the chair back on its feet, he muttered to me. He didn't say anything, but a thread of understanding had been tied. I thought it was clearly a looted chair. My grandpa is built like a tank, so who knows, maybe he just stole the chair from the Germans, and maybe that's the reason nobody sat in it. It stood in the kitchen between the tall cabinet and the window, the protruding windowsill slightly blocking it off. It acted as a place to put freshly bought groceries. It was black and ugly. It didn't match the other furniture. As far as I can remember, it was never given the honor of being brought to the dining room table. It would have stood there peacefully if not for the letter Grandpa got one day from Haifa. Grandma took it from the mailman and placed it on the cabinet by the front door. Grandpa came home, inspected the envelope front and back, and set it down again. For the first week, Grandma teased him that some pretty little Jewish girl must have fallen in love with him. Grandpa was stubborn. He didn't comment, but he didn't open the letter. The letter lay there in plain sight for more than a month. Mom pressured Grandpa to open it, but he didn't reply. He'd just give me a wink. I'd wink too, though I had no idea what he meant. In the end, Mom couldn't resist and opened the letter from Israel herself. To our amazement, it was written in Polish. Greetings. We are the grandchildren of Menachem, of blessed memory, who found shelter in your home along with his two sisters from 1942 to 1945. His sisters were killed 2 days after leaving your house, which you probably do not know. Our grandfather told us a great deal about you. After leaving Poland in early 1946, he never returned there. We understand that his experiences from the time of the Shoah kept him from going back, but we would like very much to meet you. If not for you, there would be no us. Let's meet. If you would like to come visit us, we will cover all the expenses. Please just write saying how many tickets to buy, for when, and what names. We await your reply, dear Polish friends. Menachem's family. Grandpa listened to her read the whole thing. gave a dismissive wave of his hand, and went on to the yard. To every question he answered, ancient history. Neither he nor anyone from our family went to Israel. The Israelis came to us. One day we saw them by our fence. You could tell from a mile away that they weren't from around here. Menachem's son was standing with his wife, an adult son and daughter, in front of our house. Grandma greeted them with tea and cake. We had a hard time communicating because only the father spoke a little Polish. He said he knew exactly where his father and aunts were hidden, but he had to go outside the house to find the place. His father had told him many times how he walked there in the dark. We went outside the cottage and the counting began. 7 steps from the threshold and then left to the door to the kitchen. Then 4 steps, turn right and another 4. Bend over and lift the trap door to the cellar. It worked like a charm. The trap door was in the right place. The Israeli father looked questioningly at my grandfather, and Grandpa nodded. Their whole family went into the cellar and closed the trap door. Silence fell. After a moment, Grandpa bent over and forcefully pulled up on the handle in the floor. They emerged in silence, terrified. The Israeli father looked around the kitchen and his gaze fell on the German chair. Is that the chair my father sat in every night, looking out to see if any strangers were coming? To which my grandfather replied, that's the chair I put over the trap door whenever the neighbors came over. I'd sit in it until they'd close the gate behind them. I'd sit there and pray for them to get out of here already. The Israelis wanted to take their grandfather's chair as a memento, but we couldn't give it to them because it belonged to our grandfather. They suggested paying us for it, but Grandpa wouldn't hear of it. Once they'd gone, he took the chair to the woodshed, chopped it into pieces, and said, I'm sick of staring at it, and they'll find life easier without it too.
Thank you, everyone, so much. Thank you, Antonia. Thank you to Deborah Eisenberg. Thank you so much to Wallace Shawn as well. As a translator, it's just magical to hear other people reading words that I wrote based on, of course, Mikołaj's own words. So thank you. That was just really wonderful. So now it's the 3 of us. It's me, it's Antonia, and it's Mikołaj, and we're gonna have a little conversation. Antonia has prepared some questions. Mikołaj will be answering in Polish, and I will be attempting to interpret his answers into English. So wish me luck. And yeah, we're gonna have a little chat. So
Hello. Yes, so as you can hear in those wonderful stories, there are certain themes that echo throughout this collection. And Mikołaj, I wanted to ask you about some of these things. One of the themes is that there are quite a lot of people in Poland nowadays who simply aren't aware of the fact that they are Jews. And I find the silence of Polish Jews extremely striking and affecting. And am I right in thinking that your own family never hid its Jewishness? Why did your family make that particular choice?
Jeszcze zanim odpowiem na twoje pytanie, też chciałem bardzo podziękować, bo to jest wspaniale słuchać tej książki, co z Seanem razem napisaliśmy po angielsku.
Mikołaj says before he'd like to answer the question, he wants to take a moment to also say thank you to all of the readers. He said it's wonderful to hear the book that he and I produced together in such wonderful readers.
No, najchętniej bym powiedział, że moja rodzina nigdy się nie ukrywała, bo to by była dobra wiadomość, ale tak nie jest.
I would be thrilled to say that my family never hid, but because that would be good news, but that's not the case.
W czasie wojny moja rodzina, ta część, która była w Polsce, się ukrywała i zmieniła nazwisko. I wtedy nazywaliśmy się Jastrzębscy.
During the war, the part of my family that was in Poland did hide and changed their names. At that time, we were the Jastrzębskis.
Ale rzeczywiście masz absolutną rację, że ani przed wojną, ani po wojnie nikt z mojej rodziny ani nie ukrywał swojego pochodzenia, ani nie chował go przed swoimi potomkami.
But you are right that neither before nor after the war did anyone in my family either hide their own origins or conceal them from their descendants, from their children and grandchildren.
Ci Żydzi, którzy zdecydowali się zostać w Polsce po wojnie, duża część z nich podjęła tę trudną decyzję właśnie o nieinformowaniu swoich dzieci i wnuków o tym, że są Żydami.
And of those Poles who stayed, of those Jews who stayed in Poland after the war, some of them did take that difficult decision to hide their Jewishness from their descendants.
I myślę, że to jest wyjątkowe w żydowskiej historii, bo to się nie zdarzało w innych krajach po wojnie praktycznie.
And I think that's an unusual Jewish story because that didn't happen in other countries after the war.
Polska ma swoje jasne i ciemne strony. W czasie wojny miała więcej ciemnych i po wojnie również je prezentowała. W skrócie te ciemne to był polski antysemityzm.
Poland has its darker and lighter sides, and during the war there were more dark ones. And after the war we saw them presented as well, specifically in the form of Polish anti-Semitism.
Po wojnie w Polsce zdarzały się pogromy, zabijano ludzi, podpalano żydowskie domy dziecka, więc ci, którzy przeżyli, uznali, że duża część tych, którzy przeżyli, uznali, że bezpiecznie jest żyć nie będąc Żydem.
After the war, there were pogroms in Poland. People were killed. Jewish orphanages were set fire. And so some of the Jews who remained in Poland decided that it was safer to hide their Jewishness.
Można powiedzieć, że oni zrezygnowali ze swojego żydostwa.
We can say that they renounced their Jewishness.
A myślę, że prawda o Polsce jest taka, że gdybyśmy tutaj wszyscy, ja akurat jestem w Warszawie, ale mówię wszyscy w Polsce, zrobili sobie badania genetyczne, to bardzo by się Polska zdziwiła.
My opinion is that if all of us in Poland, I'm here in Warsaw, but if all of us, talking about all of us generally in Poland, if we all tested our genealogy, people in Poland would be very surprised.
And another thing that recurs in these stories is the attitude of Jews from other countries where people are perfectly open about their identity, to Jews who are Polish and choose to stay in Poland. they can't understand why you wouldn't want to leave Poland. Can you please tell us something about that? Why would you not leave Poland?
Też bym nie chciał wyjść, żeby pod koniec naszego spotkania, żebyście Państwo myśleli wszyscy, że tu przyszedł taki Żyd z Polski, któremu jest niedobrze w Polsce i niedobrze ze wszystkimi Żydami na całym świecie.
I wouldn't like you to come out of this event thinking that that I'm how would you say this? That I'm here as an unhappy Jew in Poland, and that all of the Jews in Poland are unhappy. Czy to tak było?
Nie, że jestem takim opresjonowanym przez całą diasporę również.
I wouldn't want people thinking that I'm oppressed by the whole diaspora.
Ale rzeczywiście przez lata tak było. Dzisiaj już jest dużo mniej, ale ciągle ten głos jest słyszalny, że my, Żydzi polscy, słyszymy to pytanie, jak możecie tam mieszkać?
But it was the case for a long time, and although it has changed in recent years, that we would hear all the time, how is it possible that you can keep living there?
I może nie jest to najlepsze miejsce do mówienia tego, ale najgorsi byli Żydzi amerykańscy, a tuż za nimi Izraelczycy.
Maybe this isn't the best place to say it, but the worst were American Jews, and right behind them were Israelis.
I to zdanie zawsze brzmi tak samo. Jak możecie mieszkać na tym cmentarzu?
And they always say the same thing. How can you live in that cemetery?
A odpowiedź brzmi zawsze tak samo. No to jest cmentarz, ale nasz.
And there's always the same answer. Maybe it's a cemetery, but it's ours.
And you, as was mentioned earlier, before you wrote this book, which is a work of fiction, you wrote 3 books of nonfiction, which are, first of all, they're all conversations in form, I would say, rather than interviews. I think of them as conversations because you give a lot of yourself in them too. The first one is with survivors of the Holocaust, the second with the children of survivors, the next generation. And the third book is you talk to people who chose to stay in Poland or to leave in 1968, when there was a huge wave of anti-Semitism. I'm just wondering what made you choose to switch to fiction suddenly, and how much truth is there in your fiction, because it certainly sounds extremely real and live.
No, na to drugie pytanie zawsze staram się odpowiadać inaczej niż poprzednim razem.
I always try to answer that question differently than the last time I was asked.
Więc raz mówię, że to jest prawda, a raz mówię, że to jest nieprawda. A czasami mówię, że napisałem nieprawdę, a potem się okazało, że to prawda.
Sometimes I say that it's true, sometimes I say that it's not true, and sometimes I say that I wrote something that wasn't true, but it turned out to be true.
Ale myślę, że prawdą jest to, co czytelnicy czują, czytając te opowiadania, że prawdą są te emocje, które się czuje.
But I think the truth is what my readers feel when they're reading these stories. The truth is the emotions that they feel.
A na pytanie, dlaczego, co się wydarzyło, że zająłem się prozą, no po tych 3 grubych książkach pełnych rozmów tęskniłem za dramaturgią, którą ja ułożę, a nie którą moi rozmówcy przyniosą.
And to answer the second question about why I switched to fiction, After writing 3 large books of conversations, I missed the dramaturgy of prose, being able to shape these stories in my own way rather than being restricted to what people had brought to me.
I często mi się zdarzało w trakcie tych rozmów, które były bardzo ciekawe i bardzo edukacyjne dla mnie, że myślałem, mów już, nie idź na boki, nie idź w dygresję, układajmy tą dramaturgię, ten główny wątek, to co tam jest najważniejsze i nie, myślę, mów, no do rzeczy, nie. I
It often happened to me when I was researching those books that, and this was very educational for me, that I would be talking to someone and thinking, come on, talk, tell the story. Let's not get caught up in digressions. Our light is flickering over here, pardon. Let's stick to the main story. Let's stick to that dramaturgy of storytelling.
I to był moment też taki wtedy, kiedy zajmowałem się redakcją tych rozmów, że bardzo mnie korciło, żeby to napisać po swojemu. No ale zasady dokumentu są takie, że są pewne granice, których nie można przekroczyć, a w prozie ich nie ma. I no poczułem, że mogę to wreszcie robić po swojemu.
And when I was editing those books, I was often tempted to retell or restructure the story in my own way. But of course, one of the principles of nonfiction is that you can't do that. And so I wanted to create an opportunity for myself to tell the story, to tell stories in my own way.
And can I ask you also, you travel around Poland quite a lot promoting your work, and I'm just curious to know how your work's received in Poland in small provincial places, and what sort of reactions do you encounter from the general public?
No to mogą być 2 odpowiedzi, że albo moja książka zostaje przyjęta bardzo dobrze, albo ja zostaję przyjęty bardzo źle.
I could give you 2 answers, either that my books are received very well or that I am received very poorly.
Ale to znaczy tyle, że spotykam na tych spotkaniach i dużo ludzi do mnie pisze i ten przekaz jest taki, że przeczytali o czymś, z czego nie zdawali sobie sprawy. I to są te dobre wiadomości, bo myślę, że no nagle ta rola czy dokumentu, czy literatury się wypełnia w ten sposób, że nie zmieniamy świata, ale jesteśmy przydatni.
But I often meet people at those events where people write to me, and the gist is more or less the same, that in reading my work, they realize something that they had not realized before. And in this way, the documentary writing that I do fulfills itself.
Ale oczywiście ta cała historia ma też swój rewers, który jest agresywny, antysemicki, a przez ostatnie lata, kiedy w Polsce rządzi skrajna prawica, te wypowiedzi nie są, można to wygłaszać publicznie i wszystko jest okej.
But there's the other side of the coin to this story as well, which is that at times I do meet with virulent anti-Semitism, and in the last couple of years under Poland's current government, those sorts of statements can now be made publicly in a way that wasn't true before.
Yeah, but I would say that our government is extremely right now.
Extremely right-wing, yes. Yeah.
Because we need a bit of time for questions from the audience, so I'm just going to ask a final question to Sean.
Oh, yes.
So your translation is immaculate. It's a very,
Thank
very
you.
good rendition of Mikołaj's writing. And his writing is extremely precise and economical. And although he's writing fiction now, it's extremely pared down in style, which gives it all the more impact because there are no frills. And do you think that your experience as a translator of Polish reportage, because you've done several reportage books before now, do you think that came in handy for translating this book?
I expect so. It's funny, I hadn't made this connection, but Polish reportage, Polish literary journalism is also often written in a very pared down, very plain style. And so I expect that did give me some practice. I'm not naturally concise like that. It definitely takes work on my part. To me, the challenge with Mikołaj's writing, the wonderful challenge was that Mikołaj, as you can all hear, is sort of what I think of as a real truth teller. When you ask Mikołaj a question, he'll give you a very concise answer that is exactly the right answer. And that the more you think about that answer, the more you realize how true it is and the more layers that you see to the answer that he gave you. And it's something that I really admire in him. It's something I really admire in his writing. And so for me, a big part of the challenge as a translator was to make sure that my rendering of his words had that same kind of layered impact, had that same ability to go back and reflect on it and to chew it over again and to see different aspects of it. And I can't speak for the readers, of course, but I hope that that's the experience that readers will have with this book in English.
Thank you both very much. I think we're moving on to some questions from the audience. Sean, are you going to field those?
Do we, Cynthia, you might have to give me a hand here. Do we have, oh, I see, there's a little Q&A button here. So we have a question here. It says, this book deals a lot with the silences of trauma. I've been thinking a lot about this book as the war unfolds in Ukraine. How do you think people are processing this war? And how will it affect the memory work already in process in Poland?
Very important question. No, Polska jest krajem, który na różne sposoby, ale dalej żyje II wojną światową.
Poland is a country where the Second World War is still alive in many different ways.
I jak zaczęliśmy 24 lutego, jak włączyliśmy telewizory i radia i zaczęliśmy czytać gazety, wiele z nas mówiło to samo zdanie, że już słyszeliśmy te historie nie z innych krajów, nie z innych, słyszeliśmy je w domach.
And when we opened the papers and turned on the radios and watched the news on February 24th of this year, everyone said the same thing, which was that we'd heard this story before. And where we had heard it was at home.
I myślę, że ta historia, ta wojna ukraińska kończy bardzo ważny etap w procesowaniu, w przetwarzaniu w naszej świadomości II wojny światowej.
And I think that this war marks the next stage in the very important process of processing and understanding our memories of the Second World War.
Że od dzisiaj zyskujemy nowy punkt odniesienia, który jest również po części naszym doświadczeniem, bo to naprawdę jest bardzo blisko.
That now we have another, how would you say this? Another point of relation, another point of reference, and that it's a very real point of reference because it is so close.
W Polsce jest w tej chwili 2,5 miliona Ukraińców. w moim mieście w Warszawie jest 300 000 Ukraińców.
In Poland right now, there are 2.5 million Ukrainians, and in Warsaw, where I am, there are 300,000.
I poza tym, co widzę w telewizji czy czytam w gazetach, to widzę na ulicach płaczących ludzi.
And apart from what I see in the news and on television, what I also see are children crying in the street.
Ludzi, nie tylko
Oh,
dzieci.
people. Yes, people crying in the street. Thank you.
Więc mogę powiedzieć, że mamy komfort, że ta wojna nie jest u nas, ale mamy z nią bardzo bliski kontakt.
So we have the comfort that the war is not here, but we have very close contact with it. Thank you for sharing that with us, Mikołaj. I've been very conscious that all of my friends in Poland seem to be very closely involved with the effort to support refugees, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted this event to be raising funds for Fundacja Ocalenie. Just to remind folks, there's a link to donate on the event in the chat as well. And Fundacja Ocalenie is one of the larger NGOs supporting Ukrainian refugees in Poland, and it's extremely important work. And we hope that you'll give generously.
Przetłumaczysz znaczenie Fundacji Ocalenie? Co to znaczy?
Oh yeah, Fundacja Ocalenie means the
Foundation for Salvation.
The Foundation for Salvation. Yes, exactly. Yeah, or the Rescue Foundation, maybe even. Yeah. I think we have another couple of minutes if there is. Oh, I think there might be another question from the audience. Here we go.
Yes.
Miriam asks, did your parents discuss with you their experiences during the Shoah? If so, did you have to pry it out of them? Did you have to convince them? Or did they more openly share? And or how did they differ from each other in their communicating?
Ja się wychowałem w domu ocalonych, w którym się mówiło nie cały czas, ale dużo o gettach i obozach, ale w sposób, który był, myślę, najmniej opresyjny z możliwych.
I grew up in a household of survivors where we talked not constantly, but a lot about camps and ghettos, but in a way that I think was among the less oppressive.
Nam nie mówili w domu, że jak nie chcieliśmy jeść zupy, to nikt nam nie mówił, że w Auschwitz za taką zupę to ho.
It wasn't the kind of household where if one of us didn't want to eat soup, the answer we'd get was, well, in Auschwitz, if you didn't eat that soup, then so on and so on and so on.
Znaczy, tak nie było w mojej rodzinie.
Which is to say, that is not how it was in my family.
Nasz tata mówił, jak nie chcieliśmy jeść zupy, to mówił, że dzieci w Indiach głodują.
If we didn't want to eat soup, my father said that children in India would love to have that soup.
It was Africa for us.
Ale on był dzieckiem, które przeszło przez getto i aryjskie kryjówki i on wiedział, co to jest głód.
But he was a child who had been through the ghetto and who had hidden on the Aryan side of the ghetto and knew what hunger meant.
Każdy z moich rodziców miał inną historię wojenną, bo tata właśnie był w Warszawie całą wojnę, a mama była w domach dziecka we Francji, bo jej obydwoje rodziców deportowano do Auschwitz.
Both of my parents had different war stories because my father spent the whole war in Warsaw, but my mother spent the war in an orphanage in France because both of her parents were deported to Auschwitz.
Mówiliśmy o tym, mogliśmy zadawać pytania na ten temat również naszym dziadkom. Prawda jest taka, że wtedy, kiedy mogliśmy to robić, to nie wydawało nam się to ważne, bo zawsze to było dostępne. A teraz, kiedy już ich wszystkich nie ma, to żałujemy, że nie zadaliśmy wszystkich pytań, chociaż akurat my, myślę, zadaliśmy ich bardzo dużo.
We talked about it and we were allowed to ask questions about it both to our parents and to my grandfather. But the truth is that at the time, it didn't seem very important to us because it was always available. And now that they're all gone, we regret that we didn't ask more questions. Well, I think that is our time. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. It's so wonderful to have so many people tuning in. Thank you to Jewish Currents and to Ariel and Cynthia for organizing this. Thank you, of course, to Mikołaj. Thank you to Antonia. Thank you so much to Deborah Eisenberg and to Wallace Shawn for joining us and for readings. And I should mention that the recording of this event will be available online. So if you have friends or family who'd be interested, you can send them the link after it's over. Antonia is doing a little Vanna White here. You can purchase the book in any good bookstore or directly from the New Press online. And please, if you haven't done so already, do take some time to make a donation to Fundacja Ocalenia. They're doing very important work. The book, once again, is I'd like to say sorry, but there's no one to say sorry to, by Mikołaj Grimberg and translated by myself. So that's all, folks. Thank you so much again, and take care.
Thank you.